But I'm really excited to kick off this year's K Club with a exciting presentation on finding funding. Today, I will be guiding you along this journey, but it would not be made possible without Nicole Crowell, who provided a lot of the detailed screenshots and information about really digging into some of the databases that I'm going to show you today. So I'm going to give her full credit on that. I'm Stacy Heilman. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Director of Pediatric Research Operations at Emory University and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Sorry, I thought I heard some feedback. Barbara, are we good with the WebEx or the Zoom?
I'm not listening on WebEx.
Okay, just want to make sure we have a number of people who are remoting in. And this is also recorded. Slides are posted, recordings are posted on our PedsResearch.org website for future viewing pleasure. Part of my job with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Emory University is grants education, so making sure that people have what they need to be able to compete, find funding opportunities and compete successfully for them. So that's what I'm here today to tell you a little bit more about. But first I want to tell you more about K Club. So by show of hands, is there anyone here who this is your very first K Club that you've been to? Oh, good. Got a number of new people. Well, wonderful. Well, welcome to you. I'm really happy to tell you that this is our 10th year of K Club, and it's still going strong. K Club is really what I like to think of as a co-op. We want to provide information that's useful and relevant and practical to you. So how do we find out what's useful and relevant and practical to you? It's for you to tell us. So every presentation that we do is really aimed towards that goal. So there's a number of ways you can tell us what you want to hear more about. One is to tell us directly. You can email us, tell us directly, tell me, or Stillborn, the Georgia CPSA, Department of Medicine, Center for AIDS Research, with all of our co-sponsors. There's also a really important survey at the end that you'll all receive, and we ask that you respond to that. Let us know. We always try to hit the mark. Sometimes we do, sometimes we fall a little short. So we want to know from you, did we meet the mark? What did you like about today? What did you like? What would you like to see more of? What other topics do you want to see presented? So I'll use the May K Club as an example. So the May K Club was billed as communicating your research in a lot of different venues. Turned out we had a nice speaker. He really focused on manuscripts. So it was a little bit of false advertising because he didn't delve into those other areas like giving seminars and that sort of thing. And you let us know that, and we appreciate that. So because of that, next month in October, we'll be featuring one of our own, Dan Wexler, who will be telling us more about communicating in the other venues that weren't really touched upon in the May K Club. So thank you for that. So with that said, here are the planned topics for the upcoming academic year. All of these were nominated by K Clubbers such as yourself. Today we're doing finding funding. I mentioned the October session is on best practices in presenting your research. Really excited to tell you that CFAR has helped us secure an NIH program official who will be coming in December, telling us how do you interact with program officials, what's acceptable, what are the best strategies to go about doing that, what kind of information can you expect from them. Importance of persistence and perseverance in research. How many of you are on Twitter? Oh, not too many. Maybe we should do a Twitter session. Well, anyway, there's a history professor here at Emory named Jen Heemstra. She's phenomenal, very inspirational, really all about mentorship and persistence and perseverance. It's going to come up in the spring. Lessons learned along our career development journey. That's going to be a panel presentation, and then grant revision. You'll notice that we don't have a full schedule yet. We try to leave a couple of spots open because, again, we want you to tell us what you want to hear more about in the upcoming incidents here. Okay, so one of the little perks there is about giving us your feedback is you will be entered into a drawing for the next K Club in the Crown Royale bag. And you could win the coveted K Club mug. So when you respond to the survey, you don't have to give us your name, but if you don't, then you're not entered into the drawing. And let's see, I'm going to have Sam do the honors. He's one of our new K Clubbers. Who won the mug?
Wade Allman.
Oh, Wade, congratulations. Yay, Wade. Thank you for your patience. Okay, great. All right, so one other quick housekeeping thing I want to tell you about is we sometimes try to do what we call the K-Club specials, and they're just funding opportunities that we think might be interesting to some of you. So here's an extramural one that I want to highlight on the Girls Welcome Fund. It's a really prestigious award, the CAM, or the Career Award for Medical Scientists, $700,000 over 5 years. A number of people at Emory have won it over the years, and so that's one opportunity. There's also a couple of internal career development awards that were just announced. These are hot off the presses. So it's the Georgia CPSA KL2 and the K-12 through the Building Interdisciplinary Research Careers in Women's Health. Both of these protect 75% of your research time. They're slightly different venues of research. So the Georgia CPSA is all about clinical and translational, where the other one, the BIRCWA, is about approaches, interdisciplinary approaches to advancing the science of women's health and sex and gender research. Both are due on March 2nd. I also wanted to quick tell you about the K tutorials. These are offered by Janet Gross, who is a grant development consultant. These are, if you're preparing a K or thinking about preparing a K, these are not to miss. They go through a deep dive on all the different sections, all the strategies, and Janet Gross will work with you to help you cultivate your application so that it can be you can set your best foot forward on it. So here are the dates. Again, we'll have these in the slides, and we can probably put this in the email when we send out the survey later. Okay, so now we're going to get to finding funding. So who knows who this gentleman is and what this intention is? Anyone? Say it again? It is. Alexander, so Alexander Graham Bell and the harmonic telegraph. So Alexander Graham Bell did this. I'm getting some feedback here. Is that better? Nope. Okay.
It's okay.
You have your speaker on.
Oh, I do?
Okay, thank you. So Alexander Graham Bell funded this through the funds from one of his wealthy students, because the father of his wealthy student, or the wealthy father of one of his students, who later went on to get married. So if one of you have a wealthy fiance that is going to fund your research, you can probably just leave now. But if you don't, then stick around and maybe we can share and do funding for your research. So this is the order of today's presentation. I'm going to give you an outline of the different types of research funding opportunities, help you really find the wonderful gold mine of databases that we have for finding funding. And then I'm going to just share a couple of strategies for you to maximize your chances for research funding success. So first, an outline of the different types of research funding opportunities. I'm going to cover two different types. One is intramural, that's within the institution, and then the other is extramural, sponsors like government and foundations from outside. So first, intramural. These are what's known as seed or pilot funding opportunities. I list a number of links up here where you can find what ones are available at Emory and to some extent children. Through Peace Research.org, the medicine website, OSP also has a number of them. Really, you want to join the relevant listserv that affiliates with kind of what kind of research you're doing to find out about them. Here's one Emory-based example that all Emory faculty are eligible to apply for. The University Research Committee. You have to have an Emory faculty appointment, and you will be competing against the philosophers at every university, but in general, it is all kinds of research. It's $30,000, and applications are usually accepted in January. And I don't know the exact number that they funded last year, but I think it's somewhere in the double digits, probably around 15 to 20. Okay, now focusing on extramural, I'm just going to give a few little pointers on the differences and things you might want to think about when you're considering either foundation or federal funding. So here's this little diagram that talks about kind of the pros and cons of federal funding. So this is the NIH, NSF, those kinds of grants. So although they're usually awards, so they are awards with larger budgets, and they are usually willing to pay indirect costs. Does everyone here know, is there anyone here who hasn't heard that term indirect costs or S&A before? Basically the overhead, right? And if a sponsor doesn't allow indirect on grants, then you'll be hit what's called with the dean's tax if you're in the School of Medicine. And that means you have to, if you get a $50,000 award and they don't allow any indirect, you have to pay $5,000 of your own discretionary money. So it's important that federal always typically allows indirect to be assessed. They do have really clear stated funding priorities for the research, and pretty much any kind of research you want to do, as long as it's health related, you can find it at NIH. They have set and predictable deadlines, and they have more staff and resources available to help you. A lot of these are paid by our taxpayer dollars, so we can expect them to be responsive to us and give us information about our awards and about applications. The cons are, because they're for everybody, they're usually a lot more competitive. Because it's government, there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. The application requirements can be more complex. They have a lot of hoops you have to jump through both while you're applying and afterwards. Although they may have set and recurring deadlines, sometimes they will send an announcement that might be perfect for you, but the minimum amount of time that they can give is 6 weeks. So that's really not enough time to put together a super complex grant application, so that can be a con as well. And it is true that the review process may favor more established investigators. They've done some data and studies on this, and it appears to be that NIH and NSF both are trying to address that. It remains to be seen if it's actually going to work. So looking at now foundations, again, for the pros and the cons, one of the pros is if you find a foundation that is interested in funding your kind of research, it could be a gold mine, especially if it's super specialized, because you can really, if what your research really resonates with them, they're going to be very motivated to fund you. They do sometimes make large grants, but they're also good for seed grants as well as high risk, high reward, which NIH doesn't always prioritize. So if there's a foundation that really wants to cure cancer, then they might be willing to fund something that perhaps doesn't have the strongest premise, so to speak. They sometimes require really easy letter of intent, which I love, because when you submit an application to the NIH, you don't always know if it's going to resonate with them. Now, if you submit a letter of intent to a foundation, what they can do is read it through and then invite you to submit. And if they invite you, then they know that they're interested in you as a candidate and the type of research that you want to do. I actually am just going to move over to the con side. I think that sometimes the LOI step can be a disadvantage if you don't spend enough time on it and if you're not a clear and concise communicator. So it does behoove you to spend some time in the letter of intent and make sure that it's expressing exactly what you want to do. It won't short-circuit that process. Pros again. Is that okay, Barbara? We'll undo this. Okay. And they can be more flexible in meeting unique needs. A couple of things that are considered cons. I mean, there's just not as many dollars in general, so that's a con. Many of them don't allow indirect costs because you hit with that dean's tax, as I mentioned. Deadlines aren't always extremely predictable. And I think, to me, these bottom two are, on the con side, one of the biggest disadvantages. I always like to say there's never a wasted grant application, because every time you submit one, in theory, if you get feedback back, then there's always this continuous improvement, and you can always improve time to time to kind of hone it in. But a lot of times, these types of foundations, they don't give you anything. It's either just a yes or a no. You don't know if you were close. You don't know if they hated your science. You don't know if the students didn't match what they were trying to fund. So that can be really frustrating. And sometimes there's nobody that's a point of contact that you can even ask questions to ahead of time. Okay, so that wraps up the different types of funding. Now we're going to move on to finding suitable funding opportunities for your research. So one of the things I like to say here is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So this is really true. You want to see papers that you're interested in that are kind of in your line of research. You can say, go to the acknowledgement section and who they were supported by. whoever they were supported by, you can be supported by. Ask your colleagues and even your grant administrators, who have they been successful in getting funded by? And if you find someone, a friend or a colleague who's been successful, not only can you get a sense of if the funder would be interested in funding your kind of research, but if your friend is a really good friend, they might share their successful grant application with you, which is worth its weight in gold. So that can be really helpful in that. Search NIH Reporter and other databases to find out, again, putting keywords, what has funded your kinds of research in the past. And I put the other databases in there because we're going to be talking about two of them in depth today, both Grant Forward and Foundation Directory Online. And I put in the link to NIH Reporter. Who here has actually used NIH Reporter before? Okay, good. Almost half. So that's good. NIH Reporter is a gold mine. There's so much you can find out about using keywords and finding what, not only if NIH funds it, but what of the institutes within NIH funds your type of research. So I like to also set up both active searches and passive searches. How can you just have funding opportunities come to you? Well, signing up for listservs is a great way to do that. So email alerts. In pediatrics, we have the PREP, the Pediatric Research Events and Programs, which comes out every Friday. What's Up is the Department of Medicine digest that comes out every week. The Georgia CPSA has a beautiful roundup that they send out once a week that, again, all of these talk about funding opportunities, events, sometimes different publications, really nice. NIH agencies and professional organizations also have their own research lists. These are worth it to get on. And then, talking about creating a Grant Forward and Foundation Directory profile. And we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on this. I want to tell you that these are fantastic resources that Emory pays big bucks to be a part of and gives you just a wonderful experience of all of these just rich and valuable data. And so I'm so glad you're here today because I really want to show you how this works and give you an idea. Nothing is going to replace you just sitting down and doing it yourself, but I hope I'll give you a glimpse of how they actually work and what you can accomplish by logging in. So first I'm going to talk about two of them. First is Grant Forward. And here's just a couple of key points about Grant Forward. It contains thousands of federal and private funding opportunities with a database that's updated daily. It's got really powerful drill down features to help you kind of hone in if you get 10,000 results with your, search health science, and it allows you to really drill down and figure out where your sweet spot is. One thing I will say, again, you got to remember, Emory subscribes to these, but you do have to log in using your Emory credentials in order to get the full power. And the other one we're going to talk about is Foundation Directory Online. Back in the day, 10 years ago when we started K-Club, Grant Forward, it's actually called something else, but essentially Grant Forward was really about government and federal opportunities, and Foundation Directory Online was just about foundation. But today, I don't know why this happened, now they both do both types. So Grant Forward does both government and foundation. Foundation Directory Online is now delving into the government. But I will tell you, you do need to use these in tandem, because sometimes you'll find one in one, not the other. So it is worthwhile to look at both. So again, I'll really spend most of the time today on Grant Forward in this section of the talk, because I think it's a little bit more powerful. They both work similarly, but with Foundation Directory Online, you can get lost in there for hours, because you can search tax records and where they funded, and I mean, there's just a really kind of an interesting amount of data you can get on these different foundations, if that sort of thing goes to like it does me. Again, though, I'll walk you through how to log in with your Emory credentials. Okay, but first we're going to talk about Grant Forward. Going through the Emory OST website is one way to get to the link. But you do need to sign in using your Emory credentials. Working okay? Everyone hear me okay? Okay. When you go to create, and these are all the screenshots that, I didn't want to do like a live demo because, a lot of people go on, so these are all the screenshots provided by Nicole. So creating an account on Grant Forward, you really want to do this because this allows you to set up your profile, your interests, You can get the automated emails once you've done this based on what you've specified as your interest. So it's worth your time to do a good job setting up your profile. They have this really interesting list of support tools, so you can subscribe to their YouTube channel, I guess, to learn the latest and greatest on how to use guides and quick tips. I'm not going to dig into any of that. You can in this topic to look at yourself. All right, so we're going to just went forward and just did a secondary research looking at words and phrases. So this is your base. Nicole put in general heart. And up top in 0.14 seconds, 43 results. So that seems pretty good, right? 43 doesn't seem like too many to go through. But you'll notice that there's fellowship. Well, maybe you're Texas team, you don't want a fellowship. Or maybe you see this is a travel award and I'm not really interested in that. So 33 is manageable and you can go through it, but it's actually not really hitting what you want. So what Nicole's done next is, and so here are the sort of the filters that you can use off to the side that I mentioned to drill down. But what Nicole decided to do next is say, you know what, I'm not going to do the basic search, I'm going to do the advanced search because it gives me a lot more power. So in this, she said instead of all of the keywords or phrases, she said any of them. So either congenital or heart. And you can imagine that that yielded a whole lot more. But maybe the more, at least the ones you really want are in there. But what you need to do next then is then say, you know what, I noticed a lot of these have to do with cancer, which I'm not interested in. Maybe I'm interested in something that's unrelated. Maybe you're interested in something that is, I don't know what it would do, but doesn't involve cancer. So if you put that in, automatically it gets you down from 524 to 383. So once you start reading through them, you can really illuminate what are sort of the key factors and why you got so many, and then you can just get rid of those with one fell swoop. So refining your search further, because I don't know about you, but I'm still not looking through 383. There's all of these really wonderful drill downs over here. I'm going to walk through a couple of examples that you can get an idea about what some of them are. So one is funding. Maybe you're looking for pilot funding, so you can set the total to 0 to 50,000. Or maybe you're looking for your first program project grant, and so you want something that's at least $1 million. Whatever the case may be, it allows you to just weed out the ones that you're not interested in. A couple of others that might be interesting are sponsor type, where you're doing your research or where you as an applicant live, as well as if you're a citizen or not. And so this next screen just shows you a little bit about the sponsor types. Again, you can see your federal or foundation, looking at the applicant locations as well as citizenship. And this is what the drill down does look like. The other things that I think are really powerful are grant types and applicant types. So if you look at grant types, this is where you can say yes or no. So everything that's red, Nicole had said, no, I don't want artistic exhibit collections. That's not what my research is on. But yes, I do want research projects. And individual, she just basically said, I want early career investigators, that's what I am, and others. Once you go and do that, you've got everything else is the same, no cancer, but set all of the ones yes and no. She comes up with 184. So now we suddenly got from 383 to 184. So this is a little bit tedious, but I just kind of want to show you how you can really select and deselect to get where you want to go. Reviewing the funding opportunities and grant award, once you get those, you can actually drill down. So you can actually open them up and look at them. So for the purpose of this next step, what Nicole did is she basically said, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I know I want congenital heart, but I also just want a young investigator research opportunity. And it came up with one. So the American Heart Association, for somebody who's doing this kind of research, AHA is a wonderful organization. Emory has had lots of awards to this. You can find lots of people to give you tips and strategies on how to submit a successful application. But this is what she touched upon. And then when you drill down, you get great information. So you can see, you can save it as a favorite, you get updates on it, you can share it, you can export it. You can read the full description that Grant Forward puts out. I always say you should just go to the source though. I'm not really sure why Grant Forward decides to duplicate some of this information, In my 10 years here, I have found one time that what Grant Forward put in and what the application URL said were different, but that was enough. I'm not going to keep looking at this as a source of information when I know that at least one time over 10 years it differed. Here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the social media aspect comes in. It also tells you, kind of like Amazon, oh, you want this cell phone case, maybe you need these earbuds. So they start to really figure out what makes you tick, and they try to suggest other opportunities. So there's spend, like I said, hours on this. It also, this creeps me out just a little bit, but researchers matching that opportunity is Kaza Moazami here. Now, I didn't think he would be, but he's actually a cardiologist here at Emory University, and he was looking at this grant opportunity. At first it creeped me out just a little bit, but then I thought, well, that's actually kind of interesting, because now I'm meeting someone that I never knew existed before, and he was interested in this grant funding opportunity. Oh, look, he's also interested in mental stress and coronary artery disease. So I think it is a nice way to, get with the 21st century and really connect with other researchers who have similar interests that may be local. You can also look at his publications and a whole bunch of other information about him that I took out of this presentation. One final thing I'm going to tell you about Grant Forward is if you are somebody who's really forward thinking and you're like, you know what, I'm not ready to apply now, but I want to see kind of where agencies are going with what they're interested in funding. They have this pre-solicited opportunities list. And so when Nicole did this search, it originally came up with 1,911 just in general. So they're really looking at the future and highlighting opportunities that are up and coming. And then she went ahead and put in congenital heart to see how many of those pre-solicitations involved that, and it was actually 96. So, I mean, again, time commitment, but it could be worth your time to look at it. All right, any questions about Grant Forward? I know I kind of flew through those. We're doing great on time. Maybe I should slow down a little. Okay, any questions? We do have time for questions. We try to make case labs interactive. A lot of times we'll do panel discussions so we can get questions from the audience. So this is not the preferred format with me talking to you, but I'd love for you to yes, thank you.
Does this give you a suggestion of specific RFPs?
It does. It will give you NIH institutes as well, and specific calls. We'll talk a little bit at the end about how you can really verify that, but I think if you look at the one that said more results from your search, see if there's any NIH in there right now. Doesn't look like there are, but when we were looking at other ones, you'll find NIH ones as well. Yeah. All right, so Foundation Directory Online is the other one I was telling you about, and then just to reiterate, unlike what the name says, it does have federal and foundation. So this one, I'll just give a little tidbit because I think this is sort of interesting. At Georgia Tech, they've got 3 licenses for this, or at least they used to. So if you want to look at Foundation Directory Online, if you're Georgia Tech faculty or staff, you can, but you actually have to ask the library to give you the license, and it's only active for like 24 hours. Here at Emory, you can search anytime you want, so it's a nice little perk. You do have to go through the Emory web.library.emory.edu and go to the foundation, the databases at Emory, and search for Foundation Directory Online. It's a little bit weird how to get there. On our peaceresearch.org website, we have instructions on how to do it, or it's also outlined here. You have to go in, and so for example, Nicole typed on the F, and it came up with 24 different ones, or you could use that search for databases tool and just put in foundation, and it'll pop up. Once you do, you'll be prompted to log in, and then, so here's Nicole's login. Using your net ID, it's no big deal. You don't have to set up a separate profile or anything like that. And then you're in. And again, like I said before, I'm not going to do a deep dive on this because I just want to give you an idea of how it's a little bit different than Grant Forward, but the same idea where you come up with a lot of results and then drill down. So she did, again, congenital heart, and holy cow, like, I'm not looking through 12,877. That's way, way too many. So refining your search and foundation directory, she then clicks on the advanced search and filters. And this is, it had like that same kind of sidebar thing, but for example, she said, I want it to also be pediatric, and I also want the geographic focus to be Foundation Directory Online especially, you'll find some crazy stuff. I mentioned in the grant forward, it was on the artistic something or other. Well, Foundation Directory Online has a lot of programmatic support, a lot of like Girls and Boys Club of America, like those kinds of things. But if that's what you're interested in, this is a great place to come. If you're doing hardcore research and not program development, you're going to want to go ahead and put the research and evaluation in. Yeah.
If there's a foundation with the Emory School that hasn't worked previously, you have to get permission in order to obtain a base to work with that foundation.
Yeah, that is such a great question. So the question was, if it's a foundation that Emory hasn't worked with before, you have to go through this. So I know just enough to make it dangerous, so we'll probably have to verify this later. But usually, if it's a call for applications and it's a sponsored award, you can just go directly to the foundation. Where you have to go with the foundation office is considered a gift. And the difference between a gift and a grant is if it's a gift, you don't have to report in what you've done with the money. Like they give it to you based on what they think that you're a good investment, and you don't have to report back. So there's a grant you do, almost like a contract, I guess, as well. Okay. So when she went ahead and did the search based on these criteria, oh, bingo, 32 grant makers. That's really nice. And by the way, grant makers and grants, the grants are what's already been funded by the different grant makers. So if you're searching for funding opportunities, you want to look at grant makers. If you want to see what's been funded in the past, like I said before, best predictor of future behaviors, past behavior, then you can go ahead and look at the grants. So going from 12,677 to 32, that was really good for me. I like that a lot. So here's just a couple that that Nicole brought up that she thought were kind of interesting, especially this Robert Wood Johnson Foundation one, because as you can see just in this list right here, looking at the total assets and total giving, again, we have a theme here, best predictor of future behaviors, past behavior. I don't want to apply to a foundation that hasn't given anything in 10 years, and that's what you can find out here. Look at that. They are total assets, $11 billion, and the total giving in the last year is $365 million. So I'd be interested in applying to them. I don't know about you. Here's some other interesting tidbits on the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I really like Foundation Directory Online for the visuals. They do a lot of infographics, and here's just a couple of them. Nicole didn't give us examples, but they have a lot of pie charts and talk about what areas they do funding in. Again, you can look at their tax forms from past years. You can look at who they funded in the past, all of the relevant information about the call for applications, the contact information, so it's really good stuff. And here's again the list for the application in more details. And if it came up on your search, probably these sort of hitting the mark, but then you'll need to read more deeply to make sure that this is something suitable for your research. Other funders to consider, so this gets to what you were asking, Sam, about, so this one doesn't happen to be anything that's federal, but it is a bunch of other ones that might be worth considering based on your search criteria. And both Foundation Directory Online and Grant Forward, once you set up your profile, I believe there's a way, I know for sure Grant Forward, and I believe in Foundation Directory Online, where you can have it push you out emails when new funding opportunities pop up that match your criteria. Okay, we're going to move on to section 3. Any comments or questions about Foundation Directory Online or Grant Forward? One final plug before we move on is hopefully I've given you enough information today, at least how to log in and play around. But at least in Pediatrics, we have a concierge service when it comes to this, and that is Nicole Crowell, who I've been mentioning quite frequently. She's our Grant Proposal Development Associate. And on PedsResearch.org, we have a request form that if you want someone to either do a search for you or sit down with you and kind of walk through it with you and show you some strategies, you can fill out that form and Nicole will set up a time to meet with you. I see Karen Lindsley here. Does Georgia CCSI have any kind of concierge service like that when it comes to finding funding?
If you give them what you're looking for, yes.
Okay, okay.
They'll still do a similar service.
Okay, perfect. So Georgia CCSA, I imagine, so this clinical translational research, most anybody here could probably fit into that category, and so it sounds like many people here would be covered in that. But again, it's not essential. Concierge is nice, but it's very doable on your own as well. Thanks, Karen. Yes?
Just make a comment about the indirect, so,
Yes.
I wouldn't let that be if someone has an indirect rate, I wouldn't let that be something that you wouldn't consider that opportunity. That's something that you can work with your business manager and see, because there are certainly situations with certain foundations that Emory will refer to a 10% indirect rate, and not charge the usual rate. It all depends on what the project is and if it involves research or programmatic. So, I think it's good to use that as a guide, but don't let that be, I'm not gonna apply or consider that because there's a, indirect rate that I'm gonna have to cover.
And I think, has it changed? I think that even if they allow 5%, you don't have to pay the dean's tax. It's either kind of all or nothing, is if they don't allow any.
Right, it sort of seems to be wrong situation, so start early and get your business manager involved and let them know that you're thinking about applying for this, so they can help you with this. It seems to be every time.
Yeah, yeah. And so, for example, K Award, since it's K Club, I'll say, is only an 8% indirect rate, but that doesn't matter. You don't have to pay anything like that. A normal run-of-the-mill rate for F Awards and K Awards, and that's perfectly acceptable. Any other questions or comments about, yes?
I have a question. So, I think that in the past that I've been less enthusiastic about the foundation grant, because with the NIH, it's very, very clear what the rules are. There's less bias, where I feel like that for the foundations, if I don't know them, if they're not big, I've got more questions about the review process and whether or not that it is unbiased. I feel like with the foundations or they have different types of priorities. They might have already approached researchers, they're interested in their work first, instead of the other way around. Is there any type of ethical screening that has gone on among the foundations that are included in the search engine for these programs?
No, that is such a great question. So the question from people online, you know, is basically, sometimes the foundations you don't know, especially if they're really small, they may not post their review criteria. It's maybe a little bit of a black box. How do they actually select their applicants? Maybe they already know that they want to fund and they're just putting it out there to make it formal. Is there any ethical screening of who's posted on these websites? I don't know. But what I will say is if I was going to apply to a lesser known foundation, I would do a heck of a lot of homework on it. And these are great tools to do that. Who did they fund in the past? If I know one of them, great, I can kind of ask. You can contact the program officer, they may or may not get back with you, but based on all the information that's available through these really rich databases, you can probably do a ton of reconnaissance on it, I guess. So that's a great question though. Yeah, something to think about.
Stacy, so I just want to add, sometimes that can work to your advantage, because if you have a personal situation that you need, say, the time, or you're traveling, or you can't get a report in, if you have a good rapport with the foundation officer, program officer, they're probably much more likely to give you some leeway or, make adjustments to your personal accommodation than NIH, who says, must be in by close business at this time. So sometimes it can work to your advantage if you have that personal relationship with the foundation officer.
Yeah. That's definitely true, for sure, which I'm going to talk about here under maximizing your chances for research funding success. So these are just some strategies that I want to share with you that kind of pull together some best practices over 10 years and figure out what works and what doesn't. But I want to hear from you too. If you know of anyone or yourself or your mentor who has touched upon some of these or even something new, shout it out and let's kind of put it all together. So I'm going to go through three main areas in this last part of the talk. One is on importance of building relationships. Second is focusing to fit the funds. And third, putting your best foot forward. So first on building relationships. So much like what Andy was just talking about with the funders, really important. You want to establish that good foundational relationship. Are they going to fund you because they like you? Probably not, but can it hurt? Definitely not. Although the opposite I'm sure can be true. If you're kind of obnoxious, and not that anyone here would, somebody else is obnoxious, and doesn't really have a good rapport, then it certainly is not going to work in your favor. So initial contact can be made with that program officer. For NIH and NSF, for sure. Because again, they're our employees. We pay their salaries through our taxpayer dollars. They're required to respond to you. They don't always do that in a timely fashion, but they are required. So you just got to know that. And there's several good articles out there on how to effectively communicate with a program officer. And again, we'll have an NIH official here in December who we can get more kind of intel on with that area. Definitely only contact that program officer after you've done your homework. So when you cold call them, when you're starting to have this kernel of an idea, I'll get your bios together, I'll get some, there have to be finals for the game, but some decency to the game, because you just never have that second chance to make that first impression. And I think it's really important that you establish the foundation from the get-go. Building relationships with mentor and colleagues, these days it's all about team science, interdisciplinary, really just leveraging your research and turning it into something more than it is on its own. And then working with someone with strong grantsmanship skills and a proven track record in getting funding. Grant writing is a science and an art of its own. It's not like manuscript writing. It's not like that novel that you're writing on the weekend. It's different. It's kind of dry, but it also has to be compelling. And so really kind of hooking yourself to somebody who is a great grant writer is a wonderful idea. And Janet Gross provides that for many of us through her case tutorial and other similar programs. Here you are today. This is a great step in the right direction. Make sure you talk to people on the way out. Find out if they've been funded yet, what they've been funded in. You never know when you're going to meet somebody who's going to be instrumental in helping with your own career. There's lots of different networking opportunities for career development, including K-Club. There's a clinical research boot camp, Research Resources 101, which is monthly in the academic year that highlights different research resources across the Emory campus. Your journal clubs, your seminars, your science meetings, all these kinds of things that really provide more value than just sitting in the content that you're learning in that particular session. Anybody else think about a relationship that they've built along the way that was instrumental in changing their life that I didn't touch upon here?
I would just say, Stacy, to get out there and, at the meeting, talk to who comes by your poster, engage with people whose posters are there that are in your same field, because that's the start of contact, and those may well be the people who give you grants. Ultimately.
To review it.
To review
Yeah,
it. Because
yeah.
who's going to be most likely to be asked to get your grant? Somebody in the same relative field as you are, and it's not necessarily that it's going to, completely make it a win, but if you've explained it to them once, and then they're sitting down to read it a second time, they just come in with that much more knowledge. So get out there and present and meet people.
I love that idea. Like if you think about every person you meet at your poster as a potential reviewer, it kind of gives you the right mindset and how you want to connect with them in a friendly and accessible way and compelling. Thank you for that, Shannon. That's great advice. Anything else related to this? Okay, so now we're going to talk about Focus Fit Funds, and we've had a whole K-Club on this. You can go back in our archive and you can watch it. And what it really is about taking your research and making sure that it resonates with what the sponsor wants to fund. It's a little bit of marketing. Doesn't have to, you can still stay true to yourself, but it's really about using the right buzzwords and making sure that you're talking about the impact that this research is going to have. Craft site applications and sponsors. So here's two examples. NIH, National Institute of Health, that provides support for medical research grant applications must be connected to human health. As opposed to the National Science Foundation, which is right from their website, provides support for all fields of fundamental science and engineering except for medical sciences. Now, there actually are exceptions to these rules, but by and large, if you're doing super basic science that's not connected to human health, then NSF could be for you. But if you're trying to, even if you're working on the tiniest, sub-molecule, you have to connect it to human health if you expect NIH to fund you or be interested in that. So showing enthusiasm for strategically and clearly connecting your research to the funder's priorities. You can be shameless. I mean, you can actually use the words that are in the FOA. You should. I was just at a K-12 conference last week, and one of the, it's actually Jocelyn, you talked a little bit about how when you did a grant writing course, they actually said, in your aims, you should say, the scientific impact is. They want to know the scientific impact, just spoon feed it to them. So if they want to know how your research, links to whatever their funding opportunity is, if they state their priority on their website, you should mirror that in your grant application. Show them how. And then really just making, you don't want to overstate what the possibilities are, but you do want to state clearly of how you think this could advance human knowledge towards whatever is the end goal of your research is. Using peripheral and supporting documents to your advantage, this is kind of an area of interest of mine. Of course, the 12 pages of science is the most important, but I think if you have a real opportunity, it's actually a missed opportunity if you don't pay attention to those peripheral documents. So, for example, BioSketch. The BioSketch of a Career Development Award application, in my opinion, is super, super important, and you should actually spend some time working on that, making sure the personal statement says what you needed to say, showing that you are a good investment and what makes you tick. And maybe this is a new area of research for you, but you can use that personal statement to say what you've done in the past and why it's good evidence of why you would be successful at this research. Facilities and resources. If any of you apply for any kind of grant and Emory is your home and you don't get a 1 on resources and environment, something went wrong, because Emory has the best resources and environment. We've got lots of boilerplate out there that is ready, shovel ready for you. Just ask me and I can send it to you. And each, I think George CCSA probably has some, I know Department of Medicine does. But, and actually, if you're interested, you should look at it anyway, because Emory's kind of complex with Woodruff Health Science Center and all these different entities and how children's healthcare plan fits in. And it actually is a little bit of a primer on how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. So it's very useful. And we may highlight different cores and coursework and different opportunities that you can cite in your career development section of your grant application. The budget justification, that seems like super cut and dry, but in fact, it's an opportunity. If you have a really awesome research coordinator who is not a key personnel and doesn't have a BioSketch, the budget justification is a place you can kind of brag on them and say they've been here for 25 years and they've had 100 publications, whatever the case may be. So those are little things that, are they going to help? I don't know, but they're not going to hurt, that's for sure. And letters of support. If you're saying that you're going to use some special mouse transgenic model in your application, you got to make that believable. You got to say, if you don't already have it, you have to have a letter of support from whomever created it, saying that they're going to give it to you. You don't want to leave any opportunity for questions on whether or not you're really going to be able to accomplish this research. Anything else on focus to fit funds? I know, Andy, this is a special topic of interest to you. Did I hit upon all the keys? Okay. And then finally, I'm going to just, oh, yes, Karen.
I was going to say, don't wait till the last minute to ask for your letter of support, because some of them have to be signed by people that do some traveling, because they're very high in school of medicine. So that's something you can know ahead. I want to utilize these resources. So you can almost write your letter of support, but get that in and don't wait till the day before and make that be a thing that you're stressing over.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And to just take one step further about, you should draft that letter of support, because then you know it says exactly what you want it to say. And even really busy people like Dr. Taylor, who's the director of the Georgia CCSA, either he or Andrew or maybe you, will revise it a little bit. I mean, they read it and then they maybe add a little bit more, but your starting point is super essential. They're not going to know exactly all the keywords that you need to say. And you don't want them to have to search for the title. You just want everything in here in the nice template. And we have examples of letters of support that we're happy to share. Okay, so finally, we're going to just wrap this up talking about putting your best foot forward. And what does that really mean? So showing that you are that good investment. I don't know how many of you remember Nicole Ravel. He was a pediatric surgeon that was here a number of years ago, and he's the director of our Center for Outcomes Research and Public Health, and he was just wonderful. And he came in, he's a surgeon for goodness sake, and he started to apply for RO1s right off the bat, because, you know, they didn't believe there was anything he couldn't do, which turned out to be true. And he tried and was not initially successful, but in his own words, once Emory gave him a seed grant, and he could show that somebody was interested in his research and that the university invested in him, he credits that with then he did get his RO1 funding. So I think really showing that others are interested in funding what you're doing, you want to highlight that, even intramurally, especially intramurally, because it doesn't always show up on your other support section of your, or your research support section of your biosketch, but you can put that in there, which is a topic for another time. We can dive on biosketch. Publish before you submit that grant application. Sometimes I get asked, what's the magic number of publications I have to have before I can be considered a K applicant? Well, there is no magic number. It depends on a lot. First author publications are pretty much a must. Even if it's dual contributions, that's okay too. If it's in a really high caliber, high impact journal, maybe it's less. If it's in lesser known journals, maybe it's more. There is no magic number, but the bottom line is you at least have to have published before you get considered seriously for a K award in particular. And then clearly state what that funding will allow you to accomplish. You may think that you outlined it perfectly within the grant application, but I can't tell you how many times, even just in our seed grants, where we say you must say, in our pediatric seed grants, one of the requirements is that you have to apply for extramural funding within 1 year of the end of the award. If you don't explicitly say that and tell us what grant you're going to apply for and when, we don't really have any reason to believe you. And so just, again, spoon-feeding it, making it uber clear exactly what the stated goal is and when you're going to apply, and then what the aims of that grant will be. You know, you don't know if it's all going to turn out exactly the way that you planned, but the point is that you do have a plan. And I think it's clear thinking like that that will really help compel the funders to do so. Making sure you have that well-designed study with sound statistical plan and no fatal flaws. There's a couple ways you can do this. I know in pediatrics we have what we call a specific aims club, where we'll put together some, non-subject matter experts, subject matter experts to read your aims, and then come together with you, bring the box of tissues, put it on the table, and they give it to you. But you know what? You'd rather hear it from them than from the funding agency. So it's really been very successful at helping people hone their aims and get into the place where it's going to result in a successful grant application. I think other areas do that as well. You can ask your mentor to help you put together a panel like that if you're not pediatric. Another thing that nobody has any excuse to not engage statistical support. It doesn't matter what kind of research you do, clinical outcomes, basic science, doesn't matter. A statistical consultation is essential. And in this day and age, with the emphasis on rigor and transparency, you just have to do it. In pediatrics, we have a core. The Georgia PTSA has wonderful studio consultation. Winship, I know, has a core. So everyone has access to a statistician that they don't have to pay directly to help with their grant application. So everyone should be using statistics. And not just like the ABSTAT and the programs on your computer, but an actual expert who has their master's or PhD. And then finally, recognizing the framework under which funding decisions are made. So here, I told you we're going to talk about, grant revisions. And so that will really review like what the feedback was on grants and what people hone in on and thinking what's important and how you address that. So really understanding the grant review process is very important. There's several ways you can do that. So I know the Early Career Reviewer program. Some people have tried to do that. That's through the Center for Scientific Review, and don't get called. Other people have. So Jessica Alvarez was our panelist once, and she talked about her experience on the CSR early review program, and it was wonderful and really gave her that glimpse of how do these reviews actually happen, and having a seat at the table is essential. But there's other ways to do that. We're always looking for intramural reviewers. I happen to co-chair one of the URC committees for grant review, and so if you're interested in reviewing pilots, let me know, and I'll make sure you get a couple to get your feet wet and understand how to get some experience doing that. but it's really illuminating to be a grant reviewer. Aiming for perfect grantsmanship, I mean, that goes without saying. You know, talk about planning ahead. I think that this is where it really develops in the details. If you plan ahead, you have ample time for reviewing the grant application, making sure that everything is perfect. You'll thank yourself later for that. Here's just an example of a specific page. Now, grant reviewers generally have full-time jobs that aren't reviewing your grant. So they're doing this at, 1 in the morning, and I think they get paid a little bit, but it's not very much. So imagine trying to read something like this at 1 in the morning. You're just going to be mad before you even read it. So here's a little bit of a modification. Not being crazy with the formatting, but using underlining and white space. I mean, this can really go a long way in making sure that it's going to land well, at least for first impressions. And then finally, I'll leave you with this. I love this quote, "Good writing is clear thinking made visible." It's really important that you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you don't reflect it well in good writing, then it's going to be lost in obscurity. And then I'll finally leave you with this, that I love this quote. Of course, it's not related to grant writing, it's related to something much, much bigger, but I think it also applies to a lot in life, including grant writing, which is very daunting, but once it's done, you feel really, really proud of it, and it can be a great experience overall. Are there any final thoughts or questions on something that I didn't touch upon here that anyone would like to throw out for consideration? Not to put you on the spot, Jocelyn, but was there anything else you learned in your grant writing class that you think would be great for the group to know?
Start early.
Start early. That's a good message. Okay, well, please respond to the survey. Let us know what you'd like to hear more about. Like I said, we got some slots open, and we want to make sure that it's the information you want to hear. Thanks, everyone.